what's the next thing you're preparing for?
Nothing. Drinks on the weekend. No, I'm not. I just don't arm wrestle. I can't arm wrestle as hard and as long as I used to be in the top shape.
But I'm saying, you know what? You're still in the game a little bit.
I can still play the game. I still can.
A couple of times a year.
Yeah, but not at the competitive level that I used to enjoy. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Come on, man.
No, I don't last very long. Fuck. I just.
Hey, I'm with you.
I get. Yeah, you know, it's.
I understand.
And the biggest problem is the training, right? So, where I would pull for an hour and a half, 2 hours, once a week, sometimes twice a week.
I'm 56.
Now I last 15 minutes. Dustin will come over. We pull 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm like, I've had enough. How about you? And off we goes.
I'm 56.
56.
You just took yourself out of top 8, like you're just.
Well, the top 8 got canceled. It just never happened.
But it almost sounded like you said that even if it came back next year, you still.
I don't think I'm going to do it. Yeah.
You just gonna pull off.
I'm just reminded when the one training partner that I have, unless he goes out of the system and just starts beating everybody, because I'm having a real hard time just dealing with Dustin. You know, like. Man, I'm hoping that it's just you're getting really good because I just feel like shit every time I pull with him. I'm like, it's probably not a good idea for me to go to top 8. So my hand strength's not the same because of arthritis. The shoulder cracks and pops and twists and makes all kinds of noise. Even my hammer curl, when someone can stretch me out, it's I don't know if it's a tendon, but it's going click 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 click. It's like a ratcheting. I'm like, what the crap's happening?
We're getting old.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to fix it. Maybe if I push myself, I don't know, but I don't think it would help. I don't even know where to begin. Just said everything that I wanted to say. I started disputing Travis on the last group, like, oh, that's all crap. You know, some people are, don't take what he says as
What's wrong with that?
as truth and law, because it works for him. You should understand and learn what works for you, and that's with repetition and arm wrestling a lot, spending time on the table. Everybody probably knows my theory on the on training and.
Is it true? That's what I want to know. Is it true?
Yeah, honestly, I'm the laziest guy you'll ever meet. I spent almost all my time on the table just because I love the sport. Very little time in the gym training with weights. Everything that I have, strength-wise, is because of the arm wrestling table. No, it's just hard. For me, it's hard to convey maybe the thoughts that are going through their head, to explain it to me, to anybody. Yeah, to me, it's so simplistic. Get on the table, experience. You're going to experience all kinds of different things, and just try to keep track of that. Yeah, I mean, yes, you have to have the right mechanics, the right technique, but that will come with the understanding of being on the table. Yeah, you're going to finally realize, okay, that doesn't work. This works better. I've always had luck floating my index finger. So cap, no cap. So I guess I would say no cap, and I would actually float my index finger. My index finger is always kind of in the air, just in case I don't put any pressure on it. Yeah, I'm not trying to control with the index finger. It's the lower part of the hand. Because if they roll, then they can roll, and then I can readjust and clamp. If I'm clamped and they roll, then they're taking my fingers. If it's floating in the air, they have nothing to hit against. No set. There's no set rule how I approach the match. Sometimes I'm trying to control by going low on the wrist and squeezing. Other times I'll be a little looser. But
do you have any fundamental hand workouts besides tabletop?
No.
Just naturally?
No. Because it's so difficult, right? Because it's not only outside of arm wrestling do I have any exercises that I do. Because it's so difficult to have that cup along with the pronation. I mean, what kind of exercise could you possibly do to have the control as you're trying to lat, pull, and pronation?
Right. None at the same time.
None at the same time. Right. So it's. Right.
So you like training on table, doing it all.
It needs to be all there, right?
Some people watch the ref say go to read his lips and that. Do you think there's any credence for that? Or, I mean, I've never done it myself, but me neither. Yeah. I mean, do you think maybe it gives you an advantage?
Read the lips? No. I think it's just all about reflex. Yeah. I mean, And even that is, I think, overblown. If you have control and know how to tense up, you can almost be late to the go and still have control of the match. And in some situations, it ends up working in your favor. There's plenty of guys that would put themselves in a horrible position if I let them get the start. I mean, it's just they weren't controlled on when they're hit. Or if I had tried to match their hit or beat them to the hit, it was a much tougher match. So there's no set rules to that. Yeah, thinking back like back in the early years with like Johnny Walker. If I try to match Johnny Walker's hand and wrist and side pressure and try to beat him to the start, I would be out here and he'd be, then he would take me to here. But if I absorb that hit and let him get into a position where I could fight from, he was just so dangerous in this range where if I was trying to beat him to the punch, it put me in a worse position than absorbing it and then going after that 1,001, then go.
John, tell him how many years in a row Johnny Walker was the man until you dethroned him.
Well, I think I started beating Johnny. I beat him a couple times when I was really, really young and really surprised him. And then he came back like 6 months later and said, "That kid, I know that kid. He's not going to beat me again." I think by the time Over the Top came around, so I had turned 21, 22. I don't think I had lost to Johnny after that point. But the first 3-4 years, yeah, he was the man. I mean, he was the guy that.
I mean, before you rose, he was the man for me.
Yeah, no, yeah. Maybe Cleve could beat him, but that was about it. I mean, there was nobody beating Johnny. I mean, if you don't mind slipping and don't mind going into the straps, then it's not so important to make sure you have control of your opponent with the cup. You can still make that move with the pronation and rope, but be aware that 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to end up going in the straps. They're going to turn out, and you don't. So. As long as you know what the end outcome of doing that, it sometimes will work because somebody will possibly try to control you, So, and it's worked for me in the past. I mean, that's how I was able to top roll Devon the last 2 matches after he beat me in the hook, and I was like toasted, wore out. I'm like, all right, all I got left is just hit as hard as I can like this, and if he's still trying to catch me, then it's going to work. If he had pulled back even just a little bit, because what made me quit that match was my hand was completely toast, burnt out. My forearm had opened up, and I was like, I'm done. He's burnt me out. I actually agree with Travis. Once it gets to the strap, I like, of course, what he talked about. The strapping as low on the wrist as you possibly can get it. You're getting your hand as far through as you can get it. You want to be as high as you can get in the strap, and normally that's achieved by getting behind your arm and really super pronating your wrist. Going as far back as you can. I mean, that looks straight to the referees when they're putting the straps on. When you're like this, it looks like you're like this if you're to the side. But if you're here, that looks almost like normal. So you want to have that to start. So to create that illusion, you do that. No, it allows you to get away from them and get a much better grip.
Really cranking down, you have to fight against it. If you're back like that.
Well, if you're on the side of the buckle, I mean, how I do it in the strap most of the time is when I'm on the bad side of the buckle and they're cranking. I'm thinking, okay, but it just depends on the situation. If it's a double elimination tournament or if it's a super match. But sometimes I think I'm just going to hook. I'm going to commit to my cup and eliminate this strap. Not his advantage that he has in the strap. Yeah. And then hopefully get on the good side in the later rounds, or if you're on the situation, it matters a lot. Yeah. To me, it does. And especially when they were putting it underneath the strap instead of through the middle.
Fair.
Right. It was a huge advantage.
I've always just shot inside. That doesn't give the strap.
Right. Negates it. Right.
Yeah, that just negates it. And so that's what I've always done. Is that kind of what you do?
Right. Sometimes it just depends on the individual. I mean, sometimes I like to experiment and think, maybe I could still top roll with it, but a lot of times it doesn't work out. And it seems to be the thing, like Travis said earlier, the thing to, 30 seconds, boom, they're putting you in the strap. I mean, it's so easy. If your opponent wants the strap, they can get the strap. I don't practice the strap nearly enough just because it's such a pain in the ass to put on. I pride myself on having a strong hand cup and pronation, so I find myself working that.
So how Travis said, go low on the wrist.
Low on the wrist. It makes sense.
Way up in the hand.
Right.
Pronate back.
Pronate, not so much back, but like that.
Oh, turn.
Yeah, this is pronation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is flop wrist. The referee would say, no, straighten your wrist, straighten your wrist. You got to straighten your wrist.
What does that do?
No, but what I'm saying is they're not going to allow you to do that, right? They're going to say you got to straighten. You got to
get away with it. How does that?
It just puts you in a better spot, or higher in the strap. Just gives you better leverage when you get to set up like that, and especially if you're not on the side with the buckle and they're crank. Then once you close your hand to come down, you're higher and
when it's going low and then pronate.
Right, and the illusion that I was talking to, maybe I didn't talk to you guys about it, but the illusion is this is like no-go, referee will say straighten up. But if I'm like this and like this, I'm still as pronated as I can possibly be, and it looks straight now, right? Yeah, no, I'm setting up this like the strap like this. That's what most guys will be. Well, Michael will probably do this, right? I can do a Michael Todd jokes, but
do you drop down with
no, I guess I could. I mean, because you want it as high as you can get it and then pronate it as much as you can.
When you put there's a video where you put Cobra Rhodes where you like stonewall him in the straps.
Oh, right.
When you were outside the straps, he did open your hand, right?
Yeah. No, there's some people that you cannot control. You just can't control. I mean, yeah, I think I could have maybe controlled him if I would have grabbed him a little lower on the wrist. But yeah, there's some guys that have that hit that you're just not going to be able to control him, no matter how strong you are. I mean, Michael's a good example with his outside Kings move. It's not really strength that's doing it. He's just turning so hard that it really just makes it impossible to reel it in.
Because I think you prefer being outside the strap, right?
In the early years, for sure. Yeah, as I've gotten older and the hand control's not as good as it used to be, then I've had to rely on the straps also. But
how come everyone wants the strap?
I think the arm wrestling has progressed into everybody having to learn the strap, and it's gotten away from all the different techniques because it's so easy to get in the strap. So it's ruined a lot of the technique that was around in the past.
So I've heard people say that's a negative thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a negative thing, yeah. But
well, you're still pretty...
I mean, what do you do? I mean, if instead of 30 seconds, you let it go on for 2 minutes, that's a negative thing for the TV, right? Nobody wants to see guys struggling and fighting and,
When you were young and you got good at a really young age, what was the workout that you feel like got you there, other than obviously tabletop?
Well, I mean, if I'm telling the truth, it was only table time. It was only arm wrestling. I started arm wrestling when I was 12, 13 years old. Well, I actually started arm wrestling not even on a professional arm wrestling table. It was across classroom tables. And in the early years, it was every day because it was during roll call in homeroom that there was 4 or 5 of us that were strong in junior high, and we'd get together and arm wrestle while we wasted the 10 minutes of doing the roll call. So, but then it progressed to my dad getting involved in the sport, and he got a table, and we started pulling almost every day in the early stages, going to tournaments almost every week, local tournaments. So yeah, arm wrestling has been it for me. I mean, it's what's gotten me strong. I ended up breaking my arm when I was 13 years old, arm wrestling a buddy of my dad's, the elbow. So I was off for a year or 2, allowing that to heal. But there's nothing better than the stress that arm wrestling puts on your arm from the arm wrestling table versus doing the weights. Table time. I mean, I was a pesky kid that wanted to, pull with dad 2, 3, 4 times a day. Every time we passed the table, hey, dad, get on the table. So in the early years, it was a lot of table time. And then I met better arm wrestlers than my dad, and started going to bigger and better tournaments and pulling with bigger and better arm wrestlers, and all that experience is what makes me what I am. So.
There were times when you were bigger, heavier. Would you attribute most of your muscle mass to arm wrestling, or were you doing also some powerlifting?
I did some spurts where I would try to mix in the weightlifting, but to be really honest with you, I don't think it really benefited me that much. I'll tell you guys the same story I told everybody else. Back in the early years, I decided to do heavy weight training thing. When I started weight training, I could maybe bench press a little over 200 pounds. At the end of 8 months, I was at 400 pounds, but I really didn't know. I didn't really notice any really big advantage on the arm wrestling table. I was still pretty much the same arm wrestler.
Which era was that?
That was early on when it was Tony Celeste AWI tournaments. One year I was probably a true, I can't remember, Tony Celeste tournaments, I think were 210 with the football players. So, or maybe it was a heavyweight class because he had two different things with the baseball players and football players. But I came back, I think one year I was up 225, 230. So it's probably, I'm thinking maybe late 80s, early 90s.
Can I just follow up? You said, I'm a lazy arm wrestler. If you could look at the top 3 moments in your career where you actually put in the most effort to train for a particular thing, can you rank which was like, I
say I'm a lazy arm wrestler, but I think I love the sport so much that I did it. My dad would tell you that I wasn't lazy, that I was obsessed with it, that I thought about it all the time, and I couldn't get through the day without arm wrestling somebody somewhere, whether it was across the kitchen table or a real arm wrestling table.
You couldn't pick a top few moments where you extra tried?
No. And that's a fine line between training enough or overtraining. And I've had plenty of those moments where I overtrained and it was set back for months. So he would think after 35 years I would have the exact formula. Oh, here it is. This is exactly what. But because arm wrestling is like fighting, it's not gaugeable. It's not like weights where I can say, oh yeah, on that date I lifted the most I ever lifted. Which Michael would probably tell you that's why you should be doing it, to understand how your body is, if it's progressing the right way, is your nutrition the right way, is your rest enough. I mean, yes, I would agree, but my mindset's always been it's a fight. It's not who's stronger. I mean, obviously it's not who's the strongest, because I've never felt like, especially a lot of the guys I would pull against in the early years, they would beat me in every lift that is imaginable. So I mean, it wasn't about strength, tendon strength maybe, but I mean, who knows how to build the best tendons? I don't think they still know how to really strengthen the tendons that well. I mean, I don't.
Did it help your press?
I never would press, so I didn't even really, needed to have it. So, yeah, maybe it did something for my confidence. Then again, I don't even know if that's the case, because I think I do my best when I'm the most scared and not confident. Cupping strength. So it's not finger strength like squeezing. It's being able to cup, to restrain the other person's pronation, and then once that's established, then you have to have your own pronation into, taking their hand. But yeah, so cupping strength is more important than finger strength. But I mean, people do the grippers, just for the cardio, for the form in hand. I mean, I would never recommend ever squeezing like he's talking about, punching your hand. He's pulling it differently, completely differently. I grew up in a bowling alley, so throwing up a million games of bowling is probably more contributed to the strength than my job ever did. Yeah, I guess you can kind of all work it together if you did them separately, but in my mind, I like to have that coordination and that feel of working them all together at the same time. Right. Yeah. And like I said, there's so many different little intricate different feels you're going to get with different arm wrestlers, then you can't do it with a machine. So, I mean, the best thing that you could do for yourselves if you want to be great arm wrestlers is find a good group of other good arm wrestlers. You know, it's kind of like fighting. I mean, you're only going to be as good as the fighters that you're fighting against. You know, everybody brings something a little different to the table, and yeah, if you're not arm wrestling good arm wrestlers or arm wrestlers period, you're never going to reach your full potential. Yeah, I mean, the biggest team that I had was when Todd was living in Utah. Todd Hutchins, Kevin Bongard, my brother Bill was pulling back. Well, that's actually before the Todd Hutchins came to Utah.
Is
But
Kevin still cool?
he'll still, if you see him and say, there's a table, he'll still.
No more competing though?
No, not anymore.
He's still doing the.
Still doing the horses. Yeah, no, he's still rock solid. Yeah, he's solid dude. For me, I've always been a sprinter, so I've always done my best out of the blocks, fast, being aggressive, offensive, hit hard, hit fast. Don't allow it to be about strength. Allow it to be about, you know, the speed and the strength. So the punch. I mean, in my younger years, I think I was maybe more effective because I didn't have the injuries and I was a lot quicker, faster, so I had more power because of the speed. As I got older, I think I got stronger, more knowledgeable, more understanding, but that reflex, that nervous system, that speed starts to go away. So you have to adjust your style. I mean, a lot of them did. I mean, I'll list Kevin Bongard, my brother. Who else we used to pull with? Yeah, they became fairly high-level arm wrestlers. Todd Hutchins, he was already pretty much established before he came to Utah, but he's still making, you know, big gains.
What's the lowest weight class you've ever made?
I used to pull early years. Out of high school, I was about 185, so I could make 195-ish class, 98, whatever it ended up filling. But 3-4 years out of high school, I was up to 205, 210. That's where I've been most of my life until I've gotten fatter and older. That I'm about 2 1/4 right now, I think.
Do you think defensively, if you're focused on defense, you're significantly increasing your down pressure more? I would say so, but like, is that, you know, something you think about? Like,
so for me, being a defensive puller, I'm still whining and using my shoulder and my back and my lat. I'm pulling even from here this way, so I'm twisting this way. I'm never doing. Well, it all comes down to just the hand, the cupping, the hand, the back pressure. Whether you do it with the front of your arm, whether your back and your lat.
Because a lot of your matches, you start, you don't start with your elbow way out like Travis, but you start kind of neutral right here, and then toward the end you're kind of out. So you twist it or catch like that. How does that help you? Is that just?
Well, I don't do that on purpose. Normally, in the past I like to be offensive, yeah, but sometimes I fall into a bad spot. Half the practice is me being on the opposite, on the receiving end instead of the giving end. Yeah.
Do you let them take you there, or you just start there?
Yeah, no, I can let them take me there. I mean,
and then you reel them back. Try to get out of it.
Try to reel them back. Yeah, it works there. You know, it makes them tougher. Yeah, no, I can work out with anybody. Even I was working with a young kid for a while. And he was only maybe 130, 140 pounds. And I would almost purposely let my wrist go back so he could get in a good, you know, have good mechanics and feel like, you know, of course, if I was arm wrestling at any near my potential, I could negate any, you know, position that, you know, would feel good for him for his benefit. But and this is what I would do with that kid that I was training with. So I'd let him get right there and then just keep the pressure. Keep the pressure. Even at 140 pounds, when I started pulling like that and just letting it was giving me a good workout. I mean, I typically would never be in that position, but yeah, being so far stretched out, now going across and just working the pronation and is beneficial for me. So when people say, oh, I don't have anybody to work out with, or they're all too weak, or I mean, that's crap. I mean, well, 17 years old, he wants to pull for. I was scheduled to pull with him for 8 hours a day for 2 days in a row. So, but I literally left his place thinking, man, that little shit, he gave me one hell of a good workout. I mean, I'm doing good resistance, and he had way more endurance than I did. I mean, he just being young, he just worked the crap out of me. I left there thinking that's some of the best workouts I've ever had. I mean, it's obviously different than arm wrestling a bunch of grown men that are super strong, and you get to hone your little angles and your hits and that. I was having to really put myself in some awkward positions, but I benefited a lot from it. And everybody knows, right? I mean, super fresh. You walk into practice late. You beat everybody that's been practicing. So it's
in our group that does that every time we show practice.
There seems like a big difference between the best and the worst, but really there's not a lot of difference. I mean, it's a fine line.
When you had a tournament to train for versus a super match, did you adapt your training at all?
No.
Between the two?
No.
He's just being honest.
I'm so boring, I guess. I mean, training, what was that? What would I do done differently? From the early stages, what worked for me was arm wrestling a lot of people. Everybody that I could get a hold of, the bigger the better. I mean, I would just experience of going to tournaments, and it always treated me well. So I really never really went away from that.
It's natural.
Yeah, just
If it ain't broken, fix it.
yeah, that was my feeling, and that's what I would brag to people about. Like, well, why would you? I don't know. And I would listen. I would try to occasionally do some extra stuff besides just arm wrestle, but it never translated to the table. It never made any difference for me. I mean, I look a lot better. I'm thicker, and I can do more weights, but it added an extra 15 pounds on my body, but never made much of a difference. I always just relied on my ability to get the match over with quickly, and it's probably why I didn't do as well in super matches as I have in open tournaments, because in open tournaments I would boom, 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 fast matches. The other people would struggle. By the end of the day, the guys that are struggling are tired and weak compared to me still being fresh. But different directions, different people, different. I mean, there's all kinds of strong people that are super strong that I would say, in that area or in that. I mean, Cleve Dean was super strong. Richard Lupkus was super strong. Denis Cyplenkov, super strong. Andrey Pushkar, incredibly strong. But Devon's a different type of strength. He's a boa constrictor. He's not so explosive, not like super powerful, like gonna knock you out strength, but he's the kind of guy that has got you in the chokehold, and you know that you're gonna go unconscious here shortly, because it's so different. There are different types of strength, but yeah, nobody really stands out like, oh, that guy was just. Everybody had their weakness. I mean, to me, there was always something that was like there's a spot there somewhere, but I don't have it yet. I haven't figured it out yet, but because everybody's built different. So I mean, you got a tall guy, he's not going to be as good in a hook. You got short, stocky guy. Yeah, they're going to be real powerful on a hook, but they normally can get their hand manipulated. You can be taller on their hand to get them in their hand out of position.